Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and welcome to another one of my Death Battle prediction videos. Now, before you guys say anything, yes, I do realize that I have a giant zit next to my nose, and yes, I realize that it looks terrible. But anyway, so this Death Battle prediction I don't believe is going to have a lot of spoilers for previous Death Battles. If it does, I will give you like a very small spoiler warning, although at this point, I don't think I'm going to be really spoiling any other Death Battle, but if I do, I will tell you right before I do it, and then if you haven't seen that one and you're planning to see it, you can just click off this video. But yeah, let's just get right into this. So at the very end of Scrooge McDuck versus Shovel Knight, which was a very fun battle, actually, I really enjoyed it. If you saw my reaction, then yeah, you saw my reaction to it. But yeah, at the very end, they announced that Venom was going to be in the next Death Battle, and I was already really excited for Venom in the next Death Battle. Venom is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, and there are a lot of Spider-Man villains, and he does have a lot of cool ones. But Venom, he's like arguably Spider-Man's most popular enemy. Obviously there's like Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus, and like some of them have been considered like his arch enemies before, and so is Venom. But he's still extremely popular. He's one of the most popular Spider-Man characters out there, and I was really excited because I really like the concept of Venom. I was thinking, who could Venom fight? And obviously the first idea that popped into my head was Bane. Bane from DC. There obviously were other characters that he could have fought, but honestly, I didn't really know a lot of the other characters there that he could have fought. I really didn't know a lot of them, but I did know Bane, and you know what? As it turns out, Bane is his opponent. This is going to be Venom versus Bane, the next Death Battle. And honestly, I like these characters almost evenly. Like I said, Venom is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, and when I think of my favorite Batman villains, Bane doesn't immediately jump to mind like Venom does when I think of my favorite Spider-Man villains, but that's probably just because Batman has such a good set of rogues. Like, he has a good rogues gallery. But I do really like both of them almost evenly. I believe, pretty much evenly. I do like both of the characters. And obviously, like I said, there are some Batman villains I like more than Bane, but again, just because there are so many good Batman villains out there. But yeah, I really do like both of these characters. I'm not going to waste much time saying, what these characters are actually capable of, because I'm sure a lot of you guys already know, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people here who are just really waiting for my prediction, and who just all they want to do is hear what I have to say, and they might just leave as soon as they hear, the one person that I think is going to win. But we all know Venom, Venom has, Spider-Man-like powers, although he has been said to be, stronger and more durable than Spider-Man, much stronger, actually. When it comes to, speed and agility, obviously he's got a lot of that. I'm not sure how it actually compares to Spider-Man. I believe he, at very least, lowballing it, can keep up with Spider-Man. I think in some cases, sometimes he's faster, sometimes he's not faster, but he at very least can keep up with Spider-Man, and he fights Spider-Man on a regular basis, and obviously his reflexes are quick enough to keep up with Spider-Man in a real fight. So he is a pretty good combatant, as he's able to actually take on Spider-Man, who knows his own unique martial art with his spider sense, the way of the spider, and obviously he also has a healing factor as well with his symbiote. He can actually heal very fatal injuries. He can survive impalements, and I'm not sure if he can actually regrow anything. I think again, in some instances he can. It's kind of inconsistent. In some instances he can, in some he can't. But the point is he still at the very least has a really good healing factor, which allows him to heal, and his endurance obviously increases because of that. And obviously he can also spin his own webs from I think in some cases it's the own symbiote is producing its own webs. Sometimes he can actually produce real spider webs in the same way that Spider-Man does. I don't exactly know how that works, but I actually quite prefer the one where it's actually black symbiote webs. But anyway, so that's that there. And by the way, just before I move on, I do think that they're going to be using the Eddie Brock version of Venom. They're clearly not using Agent Venom, Flash Thompson. And Matt Gargan, I just don't think he's popular enough. I don't think that it would be smart to use him. I think he is actually the more powerful Venom. He can lift up to 100 tons or something, which is Iron Man level, which is really ridiculous when you think about it. But my point is, yeah, this Venom, Eddie Brock, that's who I think they're going to use. Obviously, he can spin webs, he can wall crawl. I believe he either has the reflex to keep up with Spider-Man's spider sense, the reflexes that's comparable to it, or he has spider sense of himself, a spider sense of his own variant. I'm not really sure which one it is, but the point is he has reflexes as if he had some sort of spider sense. So in all, you know, he's very strong, he's very quick, he's not overly bright, and in fact, like, the symbiote and the person actually, like, they technically, like, work together. You know, the symbiote needs a host body in order to live, but, you know, Eddie Brock nor the symbiote is actually very bright, and generally they just like to go in for the kill, you know, like, they just like to fight, fist fight, although obviously, you know, with the symbiote, he does obviously have some range, you know, with the webs, but, you know, yeah, generally, he fights Spider-Man fist to fist on a regular basis, and, you know, fighting Spider-Man, even though he is stronger than Spider-Man is, fighting Spider-Man is just, that's pretty impressive. And, you know, let's move on to Bane. So Bane, obviously, you know, he has the Venom, you know, Venom, which he injects into himself, and this gives him incredible strength when you compare it to a regular person. You know, it gives him strength to, I believe, like, lift up some, like, his strength is kind of inconsistent. Sometimes he's able to, like, lift up to, like, 2 tons. I believe sometimes he's been able to lift up to even more. I don't think he's, like, quite there to, like, the 10-ton range. He's not, but, you know, he's still extremely strong when you compare him to a regular person. He also has extreme durability and stamina when you compare him to a regular person. He can fight for a really long time, and, you know, obviously he's an enemy of Batman, so he doesn't have a lot of experience actually, like, fighting someone, you know, like, and actually having someone fight back, but he still has the durability to hang in there for a while if he fights someone who's, like, very strong, and he might even win, you know, because, you know, he's extremely strong as well when you compare him to a regular person. You know, he's not overly fast. I'm sure he is probably fast. Like, Bane without the steroids is, like, he is about Batman level strength and speed, because he's, like, peak physical condition as well, and while the steroids is known for giving him extra strength, I'm sure he is still pretty fast at the same time, at very least peak physical condition fast. Same with, like, agility, probably, although we haven't seen him do, like, a lot of flips and tricks or anything like that, but still, so, yeah, and yeah, that's essentially the same. That's essentially how it goes with Bane. Basically, his physical stats, generally when it comes to speed, at very least, it's like peak physical condition, and strength, endurance, and durability, you know, that's obviously raised from the Venom injections. You know, I think he has, like, different levels of how much he can inject with Venom. Again, like, sometimes when he's, like, full power, he gets, like, more strength, but at the same time, he, like, loses some of his brain power. You know, sometimes he just loses control over his mind. However, when he's not losing control over his mind, he's actually very well educated, I believe. You know, he's pretty smart. He also knows a variety of fighting styles, and he's also a master tactician. If he has prep time, or even if he's just on the fly, he can try to find out new ways to fight his opponent. So even though he is pretty strong, he's also pretty smart at the same time, and he can strategize on the fly, which is really cool. And like I said, he generally fights Batman and generally has to try to get around the gadgets. Batman doesn't generally fight Batman, you know, fist to fist. You know, sometimes he does, but generally he doesn't. He just, like, does, like, flips around him and tries to use his gadgets in order to, like, trip him up. So like I said, Bane doesn't have a lot of experience actually fighting someone who's going to, like, punch very hard back. I'm sure he does have some experience like that, but not a ton. But yeah, that's pretty much how it goes with Bane. He has steroid injections, you know, with Venom, which gives him incredible strength and durability, and, you know, he is still pretty fast and agile for a regular person. And he is pretty smart and does know some fighting styles, because he actually has, I believe, like, actually gone hand-to-hand with Batman before in some instances, and he has been able to hold his own, so that's pretty cool. But for who I think is going to win, now, like I said, I guess I even said earlier in the video that I wasn't going to focus that much on these two characters. I kind of did a bit. But anyway, so who I think is really going to win this death battle, all the way, I say Venom. I think Venom is going to win, and I have heard a lot of other people on the internet and on, like, the death battle wiki, they agree. Like, that Venom really is just, he's not going to have that much trouble fighting Bane. Obviously, if you think Bane's going to win, that's, like, perfectly fine. You can tell me why in the comments below, you know, why you think Bane is going to win, if you do think Bane is going to win. Although, personally, I haven't really seen a lot of people that actually think Bane is going to win. And let me explain why. Let me explain how many advantages I feel that each one has over the other. Honestly, the only advantages that I see that Bane has over Venom, the only advantages, and you guys can correct me on this all you want if I end up being wrong, because I'm not always right. In fact, sometimes I can be wrong, and most of my death battle predictions have been wrong in the past, although I feel really confident in this one. The only advantages that I see that Bane has over Venom are smarts. You know, he's probably smarter than both Eddie Brock and the symbiote, and also just fighting ability. Even though Venom is a pretty good fighter, I don't think he knows quite as many martial arts as Bane does. And, you know, Bane just, like, hand to hand, he's probably a better fighter. I feel more confident wouldn't, like, I feel like the smarts gap is probably wider than the fighting skill gap, but even so, I think those are the two main advantages that Bane has over Venom. However, in pretty much every other category, Venom actually has a pretty significant advantages, pretty big gaps, in, you know, like when it comes to strength and speed and everything else. Let me explain why. So first of all, when talking about strength, now even though I said that Bane's strength is kind of inconsistent, the same can be said for Venom. Sometimes Venom has been said to be like slightly stronger than Spider-Man, only sometimes. Generally, he has been like depicted to be like maybe twice as strong as Spider-Man, maybe even more. I know in like some cases he can lift up to like 20 tons, some cases he can lift up like 70 tons, and like I said, Mac Gargan Venom can lift up to like 100 tons. And if we're using Mac Gargan Venom, then obviously, you know, it's the more dangerous version of Venom, so my prediction would still be the same, whether it's Eddie Brock or Mac Gargan. I still think it's going to be Eddie Brock. But like let's lowball it, and let's say that Venom can lift 15 tons, and that's lowballing it. Okay, let's just lowball it and say that Venom can lift 15 tons. Now let's look at Bane. Now, like I said, Bane doesn't even seem to be in the 10-ton range. He doesn't seem to get there. Even when he does like his injection to the fullest, he hasn't seemed to be able to lift that much. Like, he is strong when you compare him to a regular person, considering that a person can, like, lift their own body weight, and, you know, like if a person, like, weighs, I don't know, like, 190 pounds, and, you know, a ton is, like, 2,000 pounds, that's a lot, and when you compare it to, like, 2 tons and 3 tons, that's even more, and that's still quite a lot. However, even if, let's highball this to 10 tons. Let's say that Venom can lift up to 10 tons, which I really don't think he can. That still means that Venom is 1.5 times stronger than Bane. And I know that being twice as strong as someone is quite a big deal. Like, really, when you're twice as strong, like, some people don't really understand how much of a difference that is. That's still a pretty significant difference. And like I said, even though that this is only 1.5, lowballing Venom and giving Bane all the benefits of the doubt, you know, again, like I said, it's probably even more than that. Like, Bane could probably more realistically lift maybe in, like, 2 tons to 5 tons, in the 2 to 5 ton range, whereas, like I said, Venom has been shown lifting up to, like, 70 tons in the past, and possibly even more. You know, again, both of their strengths haven't really been defined, I don't believe. Like, there isn't really, like, a set stat for each of them. There might be, I'm not really 100% sure, but the point is, you know, Venom seems to be able to lift so much more than Bane, and like I said, like, even though Bane's steroid injections are only steroid injections, they're not something you want to mess with, you know. They still give him a huge increase in strength, but it's not the same that it's not the same, like, level that the symbiote gives Eddie Brock. It's not the same. The symbiote allows him to keep up with Spider-Man. Remember, Venom fights Spider-Man on a regular basis, and it has been said to be much, much stronger than Spider-Man. And Spider-Man can lift 10 tons and probably even more at this point, which means that, you know, and obviously that's much stronger than Bane, and if he fights Spider-Man regularly, you kind of see where this is going. And that's only strength. When it comes to speed and agility, definitely Venom, definitely. Like I said, at the very least, he's able to keep up with Spider-Man, at the very least, when it comes to speed and agility and reflexes. And when it comes to Bane, you know, he, you know, at the very most, maybe a bit more than this, you know, peak physical condition, it doesn't allow him to keep up with Spider-Man, who could run up to like 200 miles per hour. And I know I'm scaling a lot to Spider-Man, but that's really how you figure this out. You know, Bane has been said to be physically superior to Spider-Man in many different ways. And when you compare Spider-Man to Bane, you know, it just, you kind of see where this is going. Like I said, Bane might be a bit over peak physical speed and agility and reflexes, but like I said, the Venom symbiote at the very least can keep up with Spider-Man, and in some cases he's been depicted to actually be faster and has better reflexes than Spider-Man. So again, you know, speed, it's really no contest in this case. You know, Venom is just, he's much faster, much more agile, and probably has much better reflexes than Venom does. Sorry, I mean than Bane does. And in durability, like durability and endurance, they kind of go hand in hand. But you know, like again, like Bane does get extra endurance and durability out of it. But remember, Venom also, like, he's been able to take Spider-Man's punches with like ease, and he also has the healing factor. And there's not really much that Bane could do to Venom in order to like really hurt him if he can take Spider-Man's punches really easily and get right back up. And even though the symbiote does have certain weaknesses like heat and sound. Bane doesn't have either of those, and he might get those if he had prep time, but obviously this isn't prep time, and who knows, would he even be able to get access to them? Who knows? But the point is, like, those are the main weaknesses that the symbiote has, and when you have someone who's, like, so much stronger, so much more durable, so much faster, like, that's already, like, giving him an enormous edge. If you have all those three advantages, strength, speed, and durability, if you already have all those advantages, you're already, like, beating this person by a ton. And Bane just doesn't stack up to Venom. Like, this, he has steroids. He doesn't have, like, a symbiote from outer space. And like I said, the steroids are not something you want to mess with. But if you have like, the whole symbiote, which gives you stats, which lowballing it can just rival Spider-Man, and that's a really big lowball right there. It just doesn't... It's not really that much of a fair fight, in my opinion. And that's only strength, speed, and durability. Also, when it comes to reflexes, again, Venom he has the, spider sense, or at least the reflexes and the senses to keep up with the spider sense, to be comparable to the spider sense, which means it's going to be really hard for Bane to actually hit Venom, especially when you compare it with his speed. And remember, Spider-Man's fast enough to dodge automatic fire, which goes faster than the speed of sound, or like maybe as fast as the speed of sound, whatever. The point is that's still extremely fast. You know how fast the speed of sound is? It's 761 miles per hour, which is well over 10 times the speed of like a car on the highway, which is 62 miles per hour. So that's crazy. And it's going to be really hard for Bane to actually land hits on Venom. And with versatility, again, it goes to Venom. Venom has webs. He can wall crawl. He has more maneuverability. He has more control over his environment. And he's, again, like with the whole spider sense thing, he has more abilities than Bane does. It's as simple as that. Bane is much more of a brawler. He doesn't have any range. And the last category, I feel, which is important to bring up, which is experience. Again, like, Venom fights Spider-Man very regularly. He fights him at least, I don't want to say every week because that might be, too much, but you get what I'm saying. Every time Venom's fighting someone, and Venom's fought other characters too, he's fought Wolverine and fought maybe the Hulk at one point, maybe, but he's fought, other characters, whereas Bane has generally fought Batman, and when he's with the Secret Six, he's fought other people before, I'm sure, but the point is, Venom has still fought so many other characters, and with Spider-Man, he generally gets in there and fights. He takes hits, he gives out hits, and with Bane, like I said, generally he fights Batman, and whenever he gets his hands on Batman, he's able to break his back. But the point is, with Batman flipping around and stuff, he doesn't have a lot of experience with someone actually punching back, and he doesn't have a lot of experience actually going toe to toe with someone with real strength. And because of Venom's already overwhelming speed, strength, and durability advantages, again, it just doesn't seem like Bane's fit to win this fight. And again, even though Bane does have some advantages, his smarts advantage, that's not really going to play that much of a factor. He might be able to use tactics more, but at the same time, he doesn't have what it takes in order to actually get the symbiote off of Brock. And even though Brock is reduced to the limits of a regular person when he gets it off, again, it's just not going to work. He's not going to be able to do it. And even with fighting styles, again, there's with a limited strength in comparison to Venom that Bane has, it's not going to do that much. He might be able to trip him at some points, but again, it's going to be hard to land hits on Venom anyway because he's so fast and he has reflexes. He has great reflexes and the almost like a spider sense of his own. So I personally think that Venom is going to win this fight. If Bane wins, I will honestly be really surprised, and they better give a pretty dang good explanation. But if you think Bane would win, that's okay. Tell me why in the comments below. I'm not going to yell at you if you think that Bane will win, because this is just my own opinion. This video is pretty much the example of this video is pretty much the equivalent of a comment. A comment trying to explain who would win. So, I feel that this is almost like getting the conversation started. So if you think that Bane would win, please tell me in the comments below, because I would really like to know. Maybe I'm actually missing something really big here. Maybe Bane actually does have fire. Who knows? Anyway, so if you like this video, please give me a like. Comment down below what you thought of it, who you think is going to win, maybe what you thought of the last death battle, Scrooge McDuck versus Shovel Knight, really anything. Just comment down whatever you want to comment, I guess. And if you could subscribe to my channel, that'd be so great. That would really help me out. I make these death battle predictions whenever I can, and when I say that, I mean whenever I know the characters well enough to do so, and I personally feel I know these characters well enough to do so. But yeah, so that would really help me out, and I would love to have you guys along for the ride. So anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I thank you guys so much for watching, because your review means everything to me, and I'm still excited for this death battle because I am familiar with the characters. I'm so excited to see Venom and Bane too. But I'm like I said, like at the end of my Scrooge McDuck versus Shovel Knight reaction, I am really excited to see Venom and also Bane. But yeah, I'm excited, even though I do feel I already know who's going to win. I am very confident in my prediction. But yeah, again, comment down what you guys think, and thank you guys so much for watching. That's it. See you later, and have a good night.